Govcoins. Will CBDCs be the bridge to mass adoption or destroy the concept of cryptocurrency? With Anna Melton, Bitcoin.com, Michael Chobanian, Xreserve, George Siosi Samuels, Faiā, and Georgiy Sekretaryuk, Beacon 256.
So, welcome to the panel, Govcoins. Will CBDC be the bridge to mass adoption or destroy the concept of cryptocurrency? So you see Anna Melton here. Anna cannot join us today. And please welcome on stage, next to me, Georgiy Sekretaryuk. Was that right?
Hello there.
Managing partner at Beacon 256. You help traditional investors enter the crypto market. Isn't that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. My background is in crypto policy and working in Canada particularly. So if you're familiar with Vancouver, I'm based in Vancouver and I've worked out in BC and a project in Ontario there. And then I moved on into investing with my partner here.
Perfect. And next one is George Sebastião. Was that correct?
Yeah, my name is George Sebastião. It's a pleasure to be here. I think today is the panel for the Georges.
Exactly.
So what's the chance of having 3 Georges on the same panel? So I co-started or co-founded the GBO, Global Blockchain Organization, which is an NGO out of Oslo. And right now I am a CBO within Simba Storage, which is a cold storage for basically digital currencies like Bitcoin.
Thank you. Welcome. And on Zoom, we have George number 3, George Siosi Samuels. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, pleasure to be amongst all the other Georges.
Thanks for joining us. You are managing director of Faiā. You build meta communities for business and government leaders. Can you say something about it?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, with the recent Facebook rebrand, it was perfect timing for our specialization, which is at the intersection of communities and technology. First came across Bitcoin in 2013, been in this space formally for about 4 or 5 years now. And yeah, we're most well known for our blockchain efforts, actually, for governments in the South Pacific.
Okay, welcome. So we have 3 Georges. I just call you George 1, George 2, George 3. Okay. Starting with you, Georgiy, isn't the idea of Bitcoin the decentralization?
Yeah. At the very core, the idea of Bitcoin has always been decentralization. But in my personal view, the interesting challenge that we are facing right now in crypto, well, that's now coming into the topic of CBDCs, is the fact that, yes, while we do need to work towards decentralization, stablecoins are an important intermediary into the next step. The challenge that we have right now is the volatility of the market is making it very hard to be an active currency in our real world. There's 2 things that are very important for any currency, and it's a unit of account and a medium of exchange. Now, the challenge that we're facing is more so that because of the volatility, and if an iPhone today is worth 1 coin, and then a year from now it's worth 10 coins, then you as a consumer will be really upset. Now, on the other hand, if a year from now the iPhone is worth 0.1 coin, then Apple is also gonna be very upset because now they're not gonna be making any money or whatever the case is. So there's a bit of a challenge, and also like more accounting for companies and governments. Like, how do you really reconcile a statement if you put a value on a product, but then a year or a month from now, that product value is now different. So the value has to change. So what's very interesting is that right now, because of how young the industry is, we don't have a crypto basket of goods or anything that we can look at and say, this is going to be our hedge, and we're going to look at this and create a purely crypto stablecoin. And so this is where I think I see stablecoins and CBDCs specifically coming in and being that more of a transitionary push towards crypto adoption that'll kind of help establish a peg. But yeah, there are dangers with governments overreaching as they always do.
Okay, George number 2. Are CBDC cryptocurrencies, digital currencies, or how do they differentiate from Bitcoin? What do you think?
Actually, there's some elements that are extremely important and quite differentiate them. You can say originally when the white paper of 9 pages got released for Mr. Nakamoto as an individual or a group of individuals, usually known as cyberpunks, they were trying to kind of create an alternate system that went around the existing financial structures that they did not trust. However, it did fix some problems, but it created other challenges that they did not fix. So one example was the capability of regulatory approach, or sometimes we call KYC or AML. The second thing it did not fix from the beginning was the capability of being a payment system, because it was not able to perform enough transactions per second. 7 transactions per second was not a solution, although later on the Lightning Network came to fix this problem. And of course, there's the issue of decentralization as well as the issue of ownership. Now, of course, the governments as they exist today have not been extremely responsible by printing massive amounts of currencies, which kind of devaluates the value that people have or they have owned over the past. That really means that you can say both play a balancing role. So I think they kind of play, you can say, a symbiotic as well as a competitive role all at the same time. But I think you need both, because on one side, things like Bitcoin provide you a hedge against inflation and provide you the capability of being your own bank, where things like CBDCs will add elements of things like performance, government control, as well as the capability of having what we call a stable coin. So that means if you pay something like $1 or RMB, it's 1 RMB. It's not like by the time the transaction is finished, the person who's providing the service or the product does not get the original money that they expected.
Yeah. And George number 3 on Zoom, what do you think, what's the difference between the demand for cryptocurrencies and the reality of CBDCs for most nations?
Yeah, so I think the explosion of cryptocurrencies has actually made things more complicated for your everyday user. And I definitely see that CBDCs have a place. And it's interesting hearing about sort of the interpretations of what Bitcoin was meant to do. I think because of the people who maybe evangelized it and got it popular, the narrative went down that way of an anti-government sort of currency. But from my understanding of Bitcoin, it was never anti-government, it was more pro-honesty. And there's kind of like a big difference. And so looking at Bitcoin as an example, as an electronic cash system, it's actually quite possible for Bitcoin to essentially be the underlying piping system for all of the world's currencies. So you could potentially have each government's own currencies just tokenized on Bitcoin. And the 7 transactions per second thing that BTC currently experiences is not a technical issue. It's actually more of a political one. It's a self-imposed limit. So these are all very interesting things just to sort of see evolve over the last however many years. And I think we still got about 10, 20 more years before we see things sort of settle down. But I think CBDCs are here to stay. And if you look at the history of power, Bitcoin was really more about sort of decentralizing power, not necessarily sort of the other things that people want to have decentralized. And I don't think they need to be conflicting.
Question to all of you. Will CBDC drive adoption forwards or backwards? Is it evolution or revolution? Georgiy?
I guess I'll go first. In my opinion, I think that CBDCs are a very important and critical next step into drive adoption for cryptocurrency market, particularly because right now there's a lot of inherent market risk around organizations like Tether running stable coins where we don't know what's happening with the transactions. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of whether you trust government more or less. It's more of a personal and individual thing. But as a whole, there's an inherent risk of an organization on their own creating the stable coin that is not backed by any authority where we don't know where the money is coming from. And so for governments, there's also the thing that they don't have is the control that they wish to have, because the governments understand that they need to adopt digital currencies in order to move forward, in order to be relevant, in order to maintain their network power and their financial power in the new digital age. The challenge is more regulatory and how to overcome that, and there's good and bad models of how that's happening around the world, and more is about to be coming into play here. But I think for a lot of would-be investors that I've talked to and that I've worked with, for them a challenge is that what they're struggling with, and that stops them from putting money into the market. I'm talking about more of the traditional investors. Is the challenge that there is a lack of regulation, and that so they fear their money might be lost. And so I'm not saying that stablecoins are necessarily the one and all be all solution, but that combined with regulation is probably a little bit of a first step. And then after that, as the crypto ecosystem develops an actual basket of goods and services native to the crypto world, to the metaverse, at that point, we will be able to create our own stable coins innate to crypto that are pegged to the basket of goods, and so we can track how that performs over time, because currently that's not really a possibility.
I do believe that I see CBDCs as an evolutionary step rather than a revolutionary one. If one knows about Tether, as you know, created originally by Brock Pierce, which is a good colleague, now sometimes traveling between Puerto Rico and Latin America. And if you actually look today, the most used coin today is actually Tether. And why? Because it's stable. And it's actually Tether that in some cases is also driving the adoption for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is amazing. It's an edge against inflation. It does have some issues. For example, if you lose the keys, that's it. Or if you forget the keys, 20% of the Bitcoins have been lost as a result of misplacing the keys. Or, for example, if you die, your spouse or the company that replaces you, how do you hand over that? So you need to have a multi-signature system that implements that. So I do believe that we need a combination of both. And I do believe that there is a lot of elements that are being addressed today, things like baskets of currencies that combine several currencies together. If we visit China, I visit China for the last 7 years on a regular basis, being CTO for Huawei for a period of time. Nobody uses cash anymore. Everything is digital. So digital by itself drives adoption, and I think the world is ready for a cashless society. So a combination of those two elements is going to be critical in the world that is accelerating business tomorrow.
I think looking to China is looking like 5 to 10 years in the future. It's always good. Josh, 3 on Zoom. What do you think? Evolution
in terms
or
of what specifically, sorry?
Is it evolution or revolution?
Yeah, I would probably agree with the evolution part. You look at the history of money, and if you look at how adoption works as well for the everyday person, if you look even at the history of crypto and sort of, the desire to have a global currency, and if you're wanting it to be for everybody, then you kind of need to work with governments as well. Because the everyday person usually will trust things with a government stamp of approval. It's great that the cypherpunks have been leading the way with their rebellious nature, but as things settle down, you're gonna kind of need more than that and different levels of trust. So I think it's an evolution. The revolution, I think, still is micropayments, and many blockchain projects, in my opinion, not really working the way it should. If we look at transaction fees for both even BTC and Ethereum, they still suffer from scaling issues on chain. So I personally still think there's a long way to go, but it's an evolution.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think should governments look out for in terms of using permission or permissionless blockchains?
Yeah, I think there's a misnomer around calling a blockchain permission. Well, we're looking at sort of the public versus private nature. I know in government circles, there's often talk about having a private blockchain, but blockchains are public by nature. So I think what we're seeing is that people are still trying to figure out how to deal with privacy on a blockchain that is essentially a public ledger. And in Europe, right, you have laws around GDPR. And I know from talking with different enterprises, et cetera, that's still a big deal. So I think for permission versus permissionless, the world is going to move more towards the sort of permissionless and public ledger route. And I think there are many great minds out, finding good solutions to deal with that, and hopefully leveraging the on-chain capabilities for, actual micropayments where the transactions aren't costing, crazy amounts right now.
Mm-hmm. And so in your daily business, what is your biggest challenge or your biggest impediment when you're working on this topic? Is it the acceptance, or is it the knowledge that people don't know about the topic? What challenge do you have in daily business? George, number one first.
Looking at the both of us. I think it depends on who you're talking to. So for the younger people my age, almost everybody's heard of Bitcoin or has invested into Bitcoin or some other altcoin. Everybody has an investment. Now the challenge is how to manage money properly and how to be a responsible investor and think about a long-term investing future. So that's one aspect. There are obviously younger adopters. They're really quickly to catch on to the technical aspects of it. So there's no issues there. I think the biggest gap right now is for the older people, that still most of the money is held by Gen X and what we call the baby boomer generation in North America, but pretty much everybody over 40 years old, right? And I'm not saying that for the audience here, but generally speaking, what we find is that there's a few challenges that they face. First of all, they don't know about what crypto is or how it works and all the ins and outs, and the current ecosystem is underdeveloped, so the UX and UI doesn't help. Number two, there's a lack of trust in the system, because all they see in the news is there's two types of articles. Bitcoin is up 100%, or Bitcoin is down 60%. Like today, I saw an article, there was the drop, and there was an article that it's down, the market is crashing or something like that. And so what they're used to seeing is just this huge volatility, and they don't understand what's happening in the market, and they're scared to get into that. So again, there's a lot of factors that are being into play, but what we can do as what we do as investors and advisory, we help them bridge the gap and adjust their investments for their risk profile of our clients. So again, and there's many tools that are being built out in DeFi, particularly the last few years. They'll let you do that. But again, it's an evolving topic depending on the generation who you talk to.
I think there's two things that are important. The first one is education. I think education is primordial, because most of the people that are using this new generation of digital currencies don't have the necessary knowledge or understanding about them. So giving them the necessary knowledge is extremely important. And I can give an example from Canada. When ATMs got introduced in Canada over 30 years ago, we used to have this booklet that was the ledger of what you had in your bank. So when people said, go use the ATM, what people used to do is use the ATM, run back into the bank, and automatically update the booklet, because they did not trust the ATM machine. So in the Bitcoin world, in the digital currency world, we have the same issues. But beyond that, I think what is very important is the use cases as we move forward, because everything about this is really about digitalization. That means digitizing the way we do business. That means we are accelerating business. One example of such acceleration, especially when you use digital currencies, is the usage of 2 or 3 technologies. One is smart contracts. So smart contracts can save business lots of dollars. One of the large telecommunication organizations in the world, without naming names, is today saving $400 million a year through the usage of smart contracts. So this is a big game changer, because the things that were traditionally done on paper today are done completely in a digital way. So besides that, we have a whole new generation of applications that were not there before. People are talking about NFTs. The new word today is gamify. Gamify is a combination of many things: gamification, NFT, DAOs and decentralized finance. So what people are doing is combining several technologies together to change the business models that we have been used to in the past. So I think the future looks extremely bright as we move forward.
Okay. And George, number 3 on Zoom, could you give us a short answer, please? The time flies.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, could you repeat the question again? Because I was so mesmerized by the answers.
The question was the biggest challenges, impediments in your daily business.
Yeah, I think it is dealing with the stigma. So, as mentioned from Georgia number 2, the education. I think the last I saw, still only about 3.9% of the world are actual crypto holders. And then, even less for those who are actually transacting or using. And so I think, yeah, the biggest challenge definitely is an education piece, but I guess that's probably why we're in the business, to hopefully help others understand and be that bridge. I think there's definitely more and more interest in sort of combining, what we're now talking about with the metaverse, and understanding the underlying technology and how that affects in sort of behaviors with online communities. And more organizations are actually now starting to consider themselves communities as well online because of this sort of transitory nature of people between the virtual world and the real world.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Give a huge round of applause to George, and George. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.